Your Creative Push, episode 244. Your Exponential Creative Investment. Hello and welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and guess what? I just turned 32. And that is not that scary necessarily, but the scary thing is that I started thinking about retirement, which is a scary thing in itself. And it's not something that I've ever really thought about other than this word, this thing off into the distance that was so far into the future, so far from something I needed to worry about today, that when I started to really realize what retirement is and the fact that I need to start working towards that thing right now, I got a little bit of a panic attack. And I know that it's something that a lot of people my age, a lot of millennials or older people, people wait too long to start to think about this kind of thing. And especially for our generation, it's something that we really need to be worried about. And yes, I definitely got worried about it when I started thinking about it. So it wasn't a panic attack. It wasn't a midlife crisis or anything, but just a little bit of worrying. And in my panic, I did something. I rushed to this account that I created 3 or 4 years ago upon my dad's advice, a Roth IRA account. And I set it up for an automatic deposit every month. Not a lot of money at all, just a little bit every single month where I didn't even have to think about it. It was just there. So in my kind of retirement panic, I rushed to that account, tried to figure out how to log into it. It took like multiple failed attempts and I had to eventually reset my password to figure it out. But when I logged in, I was surprised at the number that I saw. Those little deposits that I'd been making without really thinking about them, they added up. Not to a huge sum and nothing to retire on now, not even for like a year or even like half a year, but still it was significantly more than I thought it would be based on the small amount that it was that I was putting in every month. And that quieted my fears for a moment, but I definitely took a deep dive into learning about investing and saving for the future. And the more and more I read and the more videos I watched, the more I educated myself about investing, the more I saw how so many of these same concepts can be applied to the creative process, to your creative future. So that's what we're going to do in today's episode. We're going to look at 5 top tips from millionaires on how to grow wealth, and we're going to apply them to your creative journey so that you can grow your creative wealth. And the funny thing is that none of these have to do with actually making money. So don't expect to learn how to get rich from your art. We're definitely going to touch on that and how it's almost inevitable that you're going to eventually make money from your creative passion if you continue to invest in yourself. But this episode is about exactly that. It's investing in yourself and seeing this as what all the experts will tell you is the surefire way to grow wealth, a long-term investment. And these are all simple concepts, very easy changes that you can make, and all they are mindset shifts so that you can see the pain, the frustration, the time that you put into developing your skills as a creative person as a long-term investment, something that is going to pay off exponentially as you continue your life as a creative person, not just a year as a creative person, not a decade as a creative person, but a life as a creative person. And number one is the number one piece of advice that's given by so many millionaires, by so many financial experts. It's investing in yourself first. And it's the idea that sparked the whole concept for this episode. And I was recently talking about it on the Idea Medic podcast with Tara Roskel. And you can go to theideamedic.com right now to hear that episode. And we'll also have that linked up in today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/investment if you want to go listen to that. And I talk about this at length. But it's a simple concept that makes a ton of sense, but not a lot of us do it. Investing in yourself first. When it comes to financial investment, this means saving first. You always tell yourself that you're going to save whatever you have left over at the end of the month, that you're going to put that in the bank. and start your kind of savings journey. But then after all of your bills and all of your expenses and rent and food and groceries and all of the other things that life throws at you, these things that you think you need to buy, you don't end up having any money left over, and you say, okay, I'll try again next month. And you essentially are living paycheck to paycheck, which all the financial people tell you is the worst thing that you can do, which is the thing that I do that's really bad, that we need to all change the first second that we can. But they say to flip that and to pay yourself first, to put money into your savings before you make all of those monthly payments. And the trick is to not think about it, to make it automated somehow, and to just do it without thinking, kind of the way that I was doing with my automatic deposits that I haven't really thought about at all. So that way, it never really feels like you lost the money because it was never really in your hands, and you're doing it without thinking about it. And in my research, I have to throw in here this awesomely cool app that I found called Acorns. And with Acorns, you can set it up to automatically invest whatever amount you want, which I did as well. So now I have two little withdrawals that are going out and building towards my future that I don't even think about. But you can also set it up to, this is awesome, like to round up your purchases. So if you pay like $1.50 for something, it will round it up to $2, and that 50 cents goes into your long-term investment. So it's like you're paying a little bit extra pocket change essentially for stuff, and it's putting that pocket change into your savings, and that really does add up. I absolutely love this thing. I'm obsessed with it. I'm always checking it. It's so fun. And they're not a sponsor or anything, but you can sign up for the app. And if you do it through my link, you'll actually get $5 for free to start out. And so will I. And so that's fun. You can go to yourcreativepush.com/acorns if you're interested in checking that out. But the whole point of this is that I think this really translates to your creative goals as well. What are those big projects that you want to get to someday? And ask yourself, how many days have you been putting them off? You say, okay, well, at the end of this month, if I am able to get all my other work done, I'll get to that thing. And we talk about Parkinson's law all the time, and I'm a huge believer in Parkinson's law, that if you give yourself a set amount of time to get something done, you will take that entire amount of time to get to it. So if you give yourself to the end of the month to get it done, even if you're trying to block off an extra 3 days or 4 days at the end of the month for you to get to this other project that you have, you're going to take the entire month because you know that you have those extra 3 or 4 days to extend your deadline. So let's change that habit right now. Let's take some of those things that you put on your calendar for the end of the month or the end of the year, or even as short as the end of your day. Let's move them to the top of the list, especially those things that will take you only like an hour or two, but they're just really annoying and you don't feel like doing it, so you keep putting it off. So they've been on your brain for the past year. Come on, let's get to them right now. Let's cross them off now, not after you've got done the, quote, important stuff. Even the big, massive projects that you know you can't finish in the last 3 or 4 days of your month or whatever. Figure out what 25% of that big thing looks like. Write that goal down and then get that thing done right now before you get to your other work. If you're somebody who gets that work done, maybe right at the last minute, but you consistently get it done and you're not missing your deadlines, you are going to get it done even if you do squeeze in other work before that thing. The things that you really want to get to, you can do it. I've been doing it for the past 3 months. I've been pushing up my writing and I've been doing work for myself first. I've been getting to my creative passions first before I get to these podcast episodes, that no matter what I do, no matter how early I start them, I always finish editing the episode and I finish my post summary. Sometimes my voice is scratchy because it's at the end of the shift the night before, and then I upload it usually right around the same time every single time, no matter when I start it. Even if I started it that day, even if I started it the week before, I take the exact amount of time to finish it. Parkinson's law is a very real thing, and you can use it to your advantage, even if it does mean stressing yourself out or having to push a little harder than you usually do to get to your normal work, push those passion projects up, because when you're getting to your normal work, if you've gotten done these amazing things that you've desperately wanted to get outside of yourself, if you've wanted to move on to something new, a new creative passion, all of those things are going to help you in your quote normal work. So get to those passions right now. Invest in your creative muscles. Invest in your lifelong list and start checking those things off right now. Consistently invest in yourself first. Just like money, for me, I can't trust myself to not spend that money that I'm hoping to have left over at the end of the month. Don't trust yourself to have time at the end of the month. Do that thing right now. The more and more you do this, week after week, month after month, the more it will start to become a habit, like those automatic deposits that you're making for yourself, that you're investing into your future. Start having tangible things that you're creating in addition to the work that you knew you were going to get done anyway, and have those things work for you. You'll be a creative person with a bigger resume that will continue to grow and grow and grow, which gets us into number 2, which is compound interest. And I'm going to do my best to explain compound interest to the best of my abilities. It's a simple concept and it makes logical sense, but it's hard to really articulate the value in exponential growth, which is what this is. Basically, compound interest is building interest on your interest. So instead of taking out the money that you earn in a year from the interest on your principal, instead of taking that and saving it, you reinvest it back into your principal. And then the next year, you have even more to earn interest on and so forth. And that is an exponential growth of that savings. And again, that app Acorns can illustrate this for you. I just grabbed my phone and you can plug numbers in. So if you pick $5 a week at a 6% rate for 40 years, that will turn into $99,917 after 40 years. If you bump that up to saving, say, $25 a week at the same rates, you'd have $262,000 after 40 years. If you bump that up to $120 a week, you're a millionaire. That's not that much money, but it's that powerful concept of that money building on top of itself every single year over and over again, that exponential growth. And this is a concept that I think is so important for you to consider when you are thinking about those daily deposits that you're putting into your creative bank, if you will. When you see it as a long-term investment, when you can see that end goal 40 years from now as to where you're going to be on your creative curve, when you see it as an exponential curve, then the pain doesn't hurt as much because you are seeing the long-term goal of where you're going to end up. You're adding what you earned the year before, all that pain that you put in, the extra effort that you put in, it has made you a stronger person this year, so that next year you're that much more of a creative person, that much more of a full, robust human being. You start out stronger the next year and then keep pushing just as hard as you did the year before, but now you're stronger from pushing the year before and all that interest that you earned, so you can push even further and grow even bigger. And then the next year, you're that much further along your path and you can push even further and harder. And it just keeps going and going exponentially until you are so high up on that curve that you're almost going straight up. You can't even believe that you've reached this singularity in your career. But the really cool thing about creativity, as opposed to your financial investments, is the fact that you have no choice but to compound. And you can still make withdrawals. That's the cool thing, because as you're growing and creating, you're creating things that you can actually bring into the real world, tangible things that you can hold in your hand to see the progress. You can make those withdrawals, but your skills have still gone that much further and you can still compound on those skills. And the fact that you created that thing, the fact that you birthed this thing into the world and actually have a tangible thing doesn't take away from your growth along your journey. And the further and further you go along that exponential curve, you'll be able to actually get better and better pieces of art, better and better songs, better and better photographs. Your skills are going to exponentially get better, but you still get to reap in those rewards by having the actual thing in your hands, by actually being able to share them with other people. That's what this whole creative journey is about. That's what this whole creative life is about. You don't have to wait until you're 55 years old or the day you quit your job in order to reap those benefits. You get to have them all along. Compound interest, baby. It's looking at it as a long-term thing. That's the theme here. You're in this for those long-term investments, the longest term that you actually have, your life. Number 3 is one that's not necessarily one of the top tips given by millionaires or anything like that, but it definitely applies. And it's definitely something that I have experienced in many different forms in my life, and I'll get to those shortly. But it's the idea of checking your account obsessively. Don't do this. We need to wean you off of checking your stats, seeing how many followers you have on a daily or hourly basis, and seeing how many likes you have. Don't check your bank account over and over and over again. It's just going to drive you crazy because we're in this for the long term here, right? So checking your short-term stats, checking your day-to-day like counts and overanalyzing can definitely hurt you. It's hard. I definitely know that because as creative people, it's a very intangible thing to see your progress. And that's what we kind of equate our currency to. It's the number of followers we have. It's the number of likes we have. It's the number of comments that we have. A way to keep score kind of on how we're doing as creative people. But it can really take the focus away from that long-term mindset. For me, back when I was a professional poker player, I would play online poker, as many of you know. But the thing about online poker is there are tracking programs, so you can track how much money you're making from a session-to-session standpoint. I was playing 24 tables at a time, so it's hard to tell if you're winning or losing. You can have a feeling for if you're up on one table or up on a lot of tables, but you're not quite sure exactly from the session how much money you have made or lost. So the unfortunate thing about these tracking softwares is that you can actually hit refresh on it and see what you're doing monetarily. And that is the worst thing that you can do as a poker player because it gets into your brain and you start making bad decisions based on whether you're up, whether you're down, a relatively arbitrary number when it comes to making the right decision over and over again. As professional poker players, you're supposed to see it as one lifelong session so that if you're losing hand after hand because you're getting unlucky, that should have no relevance on how you play the next hand. And it's the downfall of many poker players and in my opinion, the thing that separates winners from losers. Luck is a part of the game, but you get unlucky and you just go on tilt. You try to chase those losses by getting your money in bad just to try to double up. It's a terrible thing to do, and that's why refreshing those stats is a killer thing to do because you could be up on the session way more than you thought you were, and you can take more chances and make really stupid errors because it feels like a free roll to you. But on the other end, if you're losing, you refresh that stat and you see this big, fat, red number that's just mind-boggling because you've been playing so well and getting so unlucky, and then you just go on mega tilt and just make bad decision after bad decision, and it just compounds, to use that word again, and just makes you make the stupidest errors ever. And I think that this perfectly relates to also checking in on your skills as a creative person. I definitely stress this all the time in the podcast about the value of looking back on your old work to see all the progress that you've made. But with that, I'm talking more about the long-term thing. Again, long-term. The real pleasure, the real surprise comes when you look back after keeping your head down, keeping your nose in your work, and just grinding it out. Keeping your head in the day-to-day game, knowing that you're in it for the long term, and then coming up for air after a little while, and taking a look and seeing the progress. A winning poker player has an upward trending graph. And that's what you're supposed to be looking at as a whole. Knowing that just like the stock market, just like your kind of creative path as a creative entrepreneur, it's going to have its ups and downs, daily, weekly, monthly. But knowing that in the long term, it's going to be an upward trend, just like the stock market, just like your investments, and just like your followers, your likes, your comments, and your skills. The important thing, again, is to build up that habit of being a person who gets to their work every single day and chips away, because that's why you're doing it. You're doing it to be an artist, to be a creative person. All you have to do to be that thing that you want to be is be that thing every single day, to keep working harder and getting better. You're going to be that thing for the rest of your life because that's who you are. That's the decision that you made. So think towards the future, not back at the past. Every once in a while, of course, give yourself that opportunity to look back and to marvel at how fast and how far you are going in your creative career, so that when you open up your kind of investment account, you're pleasantly surprised by the number that you're seeing, because it hasn't hurt you as much to have put those dollars into the account because you weren't thinking about them. You haven't been thinking about all the time and energy that you're putting into your work, to your skills, because you've already made that decision that you are going to be that person. You have made that a habit of your life, and you are the person that's living it every day. So it doesn't hurt as much. In fact, it feels good. And I was actually watching in my meticulous research about investments, this video from Tony Robbins, where he's talking about seeing stock market crashes as opportunities. And it was a really kind of profound moment for me to really understand how people catapult themselves from one financial standing to another. It's by taking advantage of those lows, by not being afraid to invest at that point, considering the fact that the stock market is always on that upward trend over the long term. Knowing that and using those opportunities, those low points in the market, to build your wealth by investing then and just holding on until your money has grown to a stupid amount. And I think that this actually applies really well to the creative process as well. And so often I ask all the people that I've interviewed these low moments that they've had, and almost always they seem to be tied to a very positive moment as well. So when you are in those dips in your creative graph, if you will, if you get a bad comment or if you get a rejection or any of the number of things that can happen to you that really brings you down, see that moment as an opportunity for you as a creative human being to rise up, knowing that you're in this no matter what until the end, and that at the end you'll be way higher on that graph than you are now. Trust that. And find a way to learn something while you're down there. In poker, I'd take a day off and I'd do a hand history analysis where I'd look at some of the biggest hands, my biggest losses, and give an honest and critical look. Sometimes with friends, we'd say, were you really unlucky or were you playing bad? Were you blaming it on bad luck or did you make a mistake that you could have corrected? And will you correct it next time? Do that same kind of an analysis when you get a bad comment or a rejection. Surround yourself with people that can give you that critical eye, that can tell you, honestly, if somebody was just being an asshole to you or if there's some facet of your creative passion that you need to work on. And then work on it. Concentrate on making that aspect of your creative career the thing that you work on with your compound interest, the thing that you put that extra effort into, so that the next year, when your money's starting to work for you again, when your creative currency is starting to work for you again, it's a strength rather than a weakness. That's how you take advantage of compound interest, by attacking those weaknesses, by going at them full force and building interest because of the extra effort that you're putting into it. That's what Tony Robbins would advise you to do when there is a financial drop, to use it as an opportunity to skyrocket yourself into another stratosphere by having faith and trust in yourself as a creative person who is living this creative life, that you can navigate those ebbs and flows and take advantage of them and enjoy actually working at your weaknesses. Who cares where your skills are right now? And who cares how many followers you have right now? You're investing in yourself. And the beautiful thing about making these deposits into yourself every day, especially when you're at your weak moments, is that you might not feel that short-term pain anymore. Unlike taking money away from yourself right now so that you can have more later on, you don't necessarily feel that loss when you're pursuing your creative passion. And sure, you might have to give other things up, and sure, you might have to give up sleep or get up early or not hang out with friends as much or skip a trip or an event or a TV show or a video game or a football game. But these deposits you're making on yourself have an immediate payout, an immediate withdrawal as well. And that's in that thing that you create. And not all of them will be masterpieces. And in fact, some of them are going to be garbage. And those garbage ones, those low moments, they're actually investments too. Because like Chuck Jones said, every artist has 1,000 bad drawings in them. And the only way to get rid of them is to draw them. And you'll be doing that. You'll be getting those bad drawings out of you. You'll be getting those bad songs, those bad photographs, those bad paintings, those bad doodles, those bad jokes, those bad stories, those lines of dialogue out of you. But there will also be wonderful ones. You'll look at it for a moment or more than a moment and wonder where this thing came from. And that moment right there is what we're talking about. It's your investment paying out dividends. I actually don't know what that means, but I think you know what I mean. It's like an ATM spitting out free money or getting an employer's match or any other financial example that I can't really think of right now. Where you get free money, okay? And you get to keep it forever. You get to put it in your pocket for a job well done. But it doesn't take anything out of your bank account. In fact, it probably adds a little extra bonus to your bank account because you have that much more confidence that you were able to create this amazing piece of work. And now number 4 is a quick one because I'm definitely not an expert in this, but I can reference you to people who are. It's the idea of multiple income streams. Starting to make money from your creative passion, even in little ways. And I know I said we weren't going to talk about making money, but I just want to make this point that you will eventually. If you have another job and that pays the bills, that's great, especially if you love it. But I think one of the things that holds a lot of people back, people who are creating art and who are creating finished pieces of work and not selling them, is that they're waiting for some moment where they'd make enough money to make a complete instant career switch. The idea of taking baby steps is sometimes scary because the thought of making $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 in an entire year from your art puts a number right next to the amount of time that you've spent on this creative passion, and it might make you feel like a failure instead of the fact that you're just starting out. The fact that you're just taking baby steps, the fact that you're in the first couple years of this lifelong exponential journey, it's tough to be below the point that you want to be at monetarily. And it's a terrifying thing, actually. And like I said, I'm not an expert in this, and I would definitely recommend Maria Brophy's book, Art, Money, and Success. She was on the podcast. She was amazing, and she is a great starting point for this idea of making money from your art. But I do know that there are a lot of you out there that have amazing work and you aren't even trying to sell it. You don't need to be in a gallery to find people that want to give you money for your work. You don't need a publisher to self-publish your short stories or your novel. And you don't need a big music producer to give you a record deal or permission to start selling your music. Start to think about making some income from your art, even if it's only a few sales, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just pocket change to you. Start to have something coming in, and that will inspire you to work harder and to charge more perhaps. It's not until you start making those investments in yourself and your art as a business, as your art as something that can sustain you, that you start to figure out those other things. They come from compound interest. They come from investing in yourself as a salesperson, so to speak, in year one so that you can grow in year two, in year three. It's very hard to make that instant switch. And in fact, it might be even better for you to make a slow, gradual, exponential curve into it rather than just starting at the number that you've defined for yourself, because you'll be able to learn when you're not as big. You'll be able to make those mistakes when there's not as much at stake. So really start thinking of ways to monetize your creative passion. You have to start somewhere. And the last thing, number 5, could potentially be my favorite, because I think for each person, it's this big question mark. That's the way I see it, as this big question mark, because it allows each creative person to go in their own unique path, a path that you don't know quite yet. It's investment in your mind. It's the main thing that millionaires recommend doing. It's investing in yourself by reading books, by consuming material. And I think this is so important and so often overlooked. It's finding out more about the things that you care about, the random things that you think about all the time, even though you don't really have much of an education about them. Educate yourself. You probably already know those things that I'm talking about, those things that have piqued your interest. For me, it's outer space, it's psychology, it's psychedelic drugs, it's quantum physics, it's life and death and the afterlife and religion. It's things that I wish I knew more about, but things that are tied to my soul. What are those things that you care about? Learn more about them, because the more you learn about them, the more they will find their way into your creative passion. And the more you find out about them, the more new stuff you'll have to care about. This stuff that you never would have even thought about unless you went down this journey to pursue knowledge. All this new knowledge, all these new questions that you have about the world, they'll seep into your work because it's a new addition to your brain, to the person that you are, and you can't help but have it come through. Perfect example, I started diving deep into investment and financial stuff, and look, I created an episode all about it. Art and creativity is all about making connections. I think that's a skill that we all have as creative people. It's being able to make those connections. So if you're able to start to learn about new things, you'll have all these different connections that you can make. And that will propel you along your lifelong exponential curve, your lifelong investment into your creativity. And that will keep you sustained for the rest of your life. Your creative retirement starts today. So just to review, number 1, invest in yourself first. Get to those extra creative passions first before you get to the things that you normally would anyway. And doing those extra things and pushing yourself further will add to that compound interest, which is number 2. All those creative things that you're going to do are going to keep compounding on top of each other. Number 3, stop checking your bank account. Stop checking on all of your stats and just put your head down and get to work. Number 4, start thinking about making multiple income streams. Start thinking about making money from your work. And number 5, invest in yourself. Invest in your mind and start consuming things that will inspire you and make you a smarter and more creative human being. As always, we'll have notes in the show notes page if you missed anything, some quotes and stuff there, some links as well. And then again, you can find the link there in case you yourself have a terrible time actually investing or saving for your future monetarily and want to download that free app I was talking about, Acorns. You get $5 for free, so will I. It's really fun. It's very addicting, and it's cool to also check out those graphs to see where you can be if you invest X amount of dollars per day, per week, per month, whatever you want to do. Again, that's yourcreativepush.com/acorns, and you can get to the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/investments. On Monday's show, we have a special one. We have Joby Harris. Joby is a designer and artist covering the film, television, music, fashion, print, and my personal favorite, aerospace industries. He made these really cool posters for JPL, and that's how I found him. These travel posters to exoplanets. Perhaps you've seen them already, but you should definitely check them out. They're super inspiring to me, and I really love that this episode will be airing on the day of the Great American Solar Eclipse. something that I will be checking out and looking at, but not too hard, and with sunglasses or those special sunglasses. But I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm really looking forward to Joby's episode as well. If you want to find out more about him, you can check out him on his website, jobyharris.com, or on Instagram, he is Joby Juan Kenobi, or you can find, again, everything we talked about today linked up at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/investments. That is all I've got for you today. Hopefully you were inspired to get your work done, so go and get it done. Invest in your creative future. See it as a lifelong journey, and it will compound on itself. I love you all so much. Go and get some amazing work done, and we will see you next time. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.